Hello, folks. Good evening, and welcome to the Dark Roast Podcast, episode 18. I'm here with the wonderful Alessandra Le Pera. Hello. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for coming, by the way.
Of course.
So, how's everything with you? I know we literally saw each other 2-3 weeks ago. I have no idea.
It was not long ago.
It wasn't long ago, but from that point to now, how's everything with you?
Good. Everything's fine. There's nothing too big that's happened.
Gotcha.
You know, it's life as usual.
Yeah. Busy with work and stuff like that?
Always.
Gotcha.
Always.
Yeah. So I know we talked about this a while ago. I know we were trying to communicate and make sure we can have this podcast with you and stuff like that. But before we get into the topics, what do you do? Tell me about yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
So I'm Alessandra. I'm 25 years old. I am an entrepreneur. So I have my own business, and it's a spiritual counseling business. And I'm actually expanding that into life coach as well. So I'm in the middle of that certification.
That's awesome.
And then on top of that, I'm a real estate agent. So I do a lot of real estate, thinking of getting into real estate investment, that type of thing.
That's awesome. So how do you have that? Because you basically have a lot on your plate already. So you have the spiritual advising and you're trying to get that going, and then you have your real estate. So tell me a little bit of how the routine is, I guess, on a daily, how you go about it. Because it could be routinely, but maybe it might be a different dynamic every day or every
tough.
week.
It's really tough. That's the that's been the hardest thing thus far, is balancing the two.
Yeah.
Especially because they started around the exact same time, and it wasn't supposed to happen that way. I actually went to school for theater, and before the pandemic, and then I was a COVID graduate, so 2020. And we were sent home in March.
How does it?
What happened?
How does it feel to be a COVID graduate? That's out of curiosity.
Not great. I mean,
how does that feel?
To be completely honest, there's
mask on, mask on.
I have the most pathetic looking graduation cap. It's literally made out of a paper plate in a bowl, and then we put a piece of string on it. So my whole major came together, and of course the theater kids were super creative and sarcastic
just play
with the way
with it.
So dramatic with this. They put the paper plate, and everyone was walking around with the most stupid makeshift stuff. We were just trying to have fun with it.
That's actually pretty cool though, because I never knew. I was fortunate enough to graduate prior to it, but because when you told me you were a COVID graduate, I was I'm always kind of curious what it felt like to be a COVID graduate. And it must have felt completely different because
really weird.
Yeah, because you're not weird. You probably had to walk a little bit later than what the exact time you graduated.
Yeah, it was a year later.
That's crazy.
So we walked a year later, but also our entire class was dispersed by that time, right? So there were people coming from all over the place, and by the time the second graduation came around, it was very spotty. Not everyone could come. International people couldn't really come. It was okay. Not everybody was even able to be there, and we were still. It was still done in a very distanced way that wasn't the normal graduation. So even then, it was still not really there yet.
Yeah. So the dynamic was it's still different. Regardless.
Yes. Yeah. It was definitely emotionally really weird. I mean, for everybody, but at the same time, when you are preparing yourself to go into the work world, if that's a hard enough transition. So you have. You've mentally prepared yourself for a while that you are really going to start being on your own around May, right? Because that's when you graduate.
Yeah.
So to get dropped off in the middle of the semester, having to go home, sent home in March. It was the second week of March or something. Yeah. It was wild, scary, and long story short, Broadway shut down.
Oh, yeah.
So at that point, I had to... At that point, my entire career, what the heck was I going to do with my life? My entire identity was had to do with theater. I mean, I've done it for over 15 years. Yeah. I've made my professional debut. It's been something that has been a fire in my heart for that entire time. Yeah. So I really didn't see myself doing anything else. But then I was also getting pulled away from theater during that time. It was weird because it was not resonating with me the same way. By the time I graduated, and I was in denial, by this time about that, because that was its own journey. That was tough.
Yeah. Okay.
So, because I like had an identity crisis at that point. I was like, who am I? Because I've been doing it since like 5, 6. I've been performing for a very long time. So to all of a sudden feel that wasn't what I was actually meant to do after all this time was so weird. And on top of that, it wasn't accessible anyway because of the pandemic. So I went into real estate, and that was something that I always wanted to do. I always wanted to be a real estate investor.
First of all, I can see you like just being really good at real, just because like your persona and being able to like communicate and talk to people. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. You're doing a phenomenal job in the real estate. Yeah. Also, too, because you were talking about like finding that identity. I think in that period of time, obviously COVID played a big part. Yeah. Like no doubt in my mind, it played a big part. It also, and not just you, I think a lot of people had like that identity issue too. I think it's more like a soul searching.
For sure.
Because you had that mindset for 15 years, well, prior to that, like it's way less than that, but still, you were set on like thinking of theater, like Broadway, you know, being I guess actress or something, you know what I mean? But the crazy thing is too, like, and again, everybody kind of goes through that time where there's like a long pause and you kind of have to, you know, set yourself back for a little bit.
Yep.
Just because I think it's more for the fact that you want to kind of have an idea, okay, where like is theater really the direction I want to be in? And or is it maybe there's something else that I might enjoy and show passion? It's like me, like I graduated with IT.
Okay.
It was funny because I actually was supposed to go to DC back in 2018. That's actually when I graduated. I already had like a contract job set up in DC. You know, shout out to my friends, well, ex-girlfriend now, but like she helped out with both of us to send our resumes to the I think it was like it's called BAI, so it's a government contract company. And so when we got the contract, the position was in DC. It was for the Department of Homeland Security for cybersecurity as a programmer, which is huge because it's something that correlates with what I want to do career-wise. You know what I mean? And then as time progressed, and this is around October 2018, and I remember there was a government shutdown. I don't know if you remember the government shutdown.
I remember that.
You remember that? Yeah. So something had happened in that time period. So then I followed up with the people there at BAI saying, hey, like, just want to follow up, like, when are we starting? Because we already signed the contract. Right. We got like what the base salary was going to be. If you do well, if you do well for like a couple months, you'll probably get the potential full-time job working for the DHS. So I try to follow up. All of a sudden, like, they were telling me like with the government shutdown happening, we're put on hold. So we will keep you updated for the time being until further notice. So like, all right, that's fine. And so 2 months pass, and I'm like, what the hell's happening? I don't know what's going on. So I followed up again, no response. Nothing. So it made me realize, even before that, like, I started applying anyway just in case. But then that gave me like just kind of like what you were going through. I had that feeling of, where do I go?
Now what?
You know, where do I find like a direction to go?
Right.
And that's when I got lucky. I got blessed. You know, I'm not gonna say the company name, but I give them a shout out anyway. But shout out to the company that picked me up. But they gave me like an opportunity to you know, like, hey, like, you know, we saw your resume. It's not IT though, but it's something to do with like involving with CAD drawings and literally CAD drawings and creating with purchase orders.
Okay.
But it was something like I needed something to get me going.
Something.
Yeah.
Anything.
Because if you don't do nothing, you're gonna feel like you're
oh my
lost,
gosh,
right?
Yeah, you're gonna go down into a depression.
You're going to go down to a depression, and that's when that feeling of, damn, like, where do I go? Like, I feel like, what do I do now? What do I just continue like applying for places, stick with IT, or just apply for other places and see what I can do? And at the end of the day, really, it's more about like, you know, your work ethic, like how much do you want it, you know what I mean? And that's when I got into the design, it's called a design assistant. So I'm basically doing like CAD drawings for corrugated like packaging.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm doing that, and I'm also creating purchase orders for like print dies, like print plates that, you know, like the presses onto the box.
Oh yeah.
So I was doing that, and then I did really well to the point that they were like, we want to hire you full time, and that's when I became a customer service inside sales rep.
Oh, cool.
And that's when I got into like, you know, communicating. I got really better at communicating with customers and being able, just from doing it every day.
Yeah.
And it made me really like, it felt good because I wanted it to do something and I wanted to, you know.
Yes.
But then like as time progressed, I knew I wanted to go to somewhere different. And that's when currently where I'm at now, I'm in supply chain.
Okay.
Because supply chain I feel like is more like challenging, and I feel like, you know, with understanding the concept of the company. So I felt like supply chain was like the backbone, and being able to see everything from warehouse to what we purchase to the engineers to all that. I work for a power supply company, and being able to see all that, it was so awesome to see. And the only thing is it's a lot of work. It's a lot of stress. To the point where you have to keep your composure, understanding like, listen, you're gonna get a lot of pressing, but at the end of the day, as long as you're getting the things in and getting them out, you're doing well.
I mean, that's a life lesson in and of itself, though, you know.
Exactly.
So you should be able. Yeah, that's a good lesson to have.
It is a good lesson, but sorry, like I completely sidetracked it because I know it was something that like it correlates to like what you were going through.
Yes, you understand it.
Exactly. Yeah, I understand. That's why I felt that journey where it was just like, where do I go? Which direction do I go?
I call it hermit mode. Hermit mode meaning like you're going within.
Yeah.
So you're not focused on the external, you're focused on the internal.
Yes.
So I just want to draw so that it makes sense to the people listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
So because I was about to go into something spiritual and I didn't even touch that yet.
So you can pick. You can choose that one or you can choose this one. This one.
Okay.
Yes, but go ahead.
So real estate. Real estate was always something I wanted to do on the side later on.
Yeah.
And it was something that I really enjoyed the concept of. And when I was doing it, it kind of felt like I was swimming upstream. Like I really liked it, but it didn't feel like it. That wasn't the job. That wasn't the career.
Yeah. It's like a big difference between like and love.
Yes. You know what I mean? So real estate is something that I definitely enjoy. And it's something that I do. It's not my main gig. It's and the good thing about real estate is you only have to sell a couple houses to do really well each year, right? So you don't have to sell 10 houses. Yeah. You could only sell like 3, 4.
And you're basically
and you're fine.
And you're set.
Yeah. So on top of all of that, a couple years ago, 2016, I had an awakening because I met somebody who was a catalyst for that awakening, where I just there was this feeling of I knew that there was more out there, and this person just it was just the catalyst for me to get there with my brain. And I had always been spiritual, but this was a whole different level of spirituality. This was so different because I grew up very religious, but I didn't really know the difference between religious and spiritual. I went to Catholic school pretty much my entire life, so I really wasn't exposed to any other facet of that. Right. And what I find spirituality is, at least the one that I'm doing, is taking... I'm doing is so not the right phrase. What resonates with me, you know? The version of spirituality that resonates with me, because it resonates with everybody differently. Yeah. It really does have the same core, or it should have the same core, and that core is love. And if it's anything other than love, I don't really know what you're practicing. Yeah,
at that point, it's just like, it depends on like what the person like resonates with.
Exactly. So the purpose of it and the way to go about it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask too, because then since we're gonna go towards that, I was gonna say, like, was the catalyst back in 2016 that awakening? Is that like the origin of where like the spiritual advisor kind of came from? Like, I don't want to say it started completely right at the bat, but I felt like that awakening. I also want to know more details about what caused, or what were the what's it called? Man, I'm getting old. I can't remember what the word is. But what were the what's it called? The build-ups of that awakening. Like, what were the things that were initiating?
Okay, so all right, that's a loaded question. I don't even think you realize what you're asking. So we're going back like years and years and years.
Like, this is past
childhood.
Oh, it was before 2016?
Yeah.
Oh shit, never mind.
Leading up to that. So long story short, I've been through a lot. For someone my age, I've seen a lot. I've been through a lot. And I had to grow up really, really young. I had to grow up at the age of 9, 10 years old, really young.
Really?
Yeah. So that was the first onset of kind of my growing into a version of myself that I didn't even realize was possible. You know how you're almost like kicked and pushed into a situation and you're just forced to travel through it, and then when you come out you're like, oh my god, look at me go, like damn, I'm strong, like look what I just did. But it wasn't like, it wasn't your idea for this to happen. So there was a family issue and that I had to grow up at 9, 10. It was an issue with a parent. And then after that, a couple years later, me, my mother, my sister, and my brother, we were all diagnosed with late-stage chronic Lyme disease.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, we had to travel to Germany to get transplants for it. It got really, really, really bad.
Wow.
So I was already just being tested. Like my faith was being tested at this point because
at the early stages too.
Right, exactly. So this was before 2016. So we went to Germany in 2015 for the transplant, and amen, I'm right here. Like it worked. Yeah,
it's a blessing.
And our organs were not doing too hot. So
but it's crazy though. That's the thing, because it's like, you know, what I noticed too, especially in like just regular human life, you know, you always you expect, like, you would expect the unexpected. You know, having like that, especially like the whole family. And just going through that, that's crazy to me. That's crazy.
It was, I mean, it's sad that the whole family had to do it, but I honestly, it was nice that everyone was together selfishly.
Of course. I think because of that, but it brought you guys like closer.
It did,
especially something like that, like a Lyme disease, and that cost like the whole family. It's like that bondage and being able to stick throughout together, that plays a big part. You know what I mean? And so that, like, again, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. You know what I mean? Like that you guys are strong, like mentally and emotionally. That's crazy. I mean,
the family thing, so that lasted 7 years. Okay. 7 years. And that was the very beginning of when I started to think about resilience and what that meant. And I was thinking of that at like 9 or 10 years old, and that's not something like a 9 or 10-year-old really thinks about.
No,
is that type of thing.
I thought about Toys R Us. God damn. I was like, you talk about resilience?
Resilience, being an overcomer, you know, stepping up to the plate, voicing your truth, no matter who it is that is getting in the way of your life in any way, and from regardless of who it is. It could be a parent. You still voice your truth, and that's what you're supposed to do. So learning that at 9 or 10 years old, it was crazy. And then just a couple years later, was the diagnosis, and then in 2015 was Germany. So then 2016, so here I was like, wow, I'm doing really great, this is awesome. I meet this person who just catapults me into it was like a mind blown type moment where all of a sudden the roof, if you think about it, it's almost like your consciousness, your brain, the roof there was open, and there was like 6 more levels of it was crazy. Like that's what the awakening, that you're ascending, right? You're ascending in consciousness and your capacity to hold that level of consciousness. So in 2016, I was what was the catalyst for me to get into that. And then in 2018, I started studying, and in 2021, I became a certified psychic medium and Reiki master teacher and healer, and an ordained minister as well. So and a spiritual advisor and counselor. So
all in like the gap from 2018 to now, like all.
2018 to now. I studied my ass off. So
that's actually pretty solid.
And I thought that that was gonna be my side gig. I was gonna be acting, and then that was gonna be my side gig, because I started to feel the inner calling to do that type of work after 2016. So I started doing my own studying with it and my own developing of it, and I realized that what I loved about theater was the art and was telling the story. It was I had really nothing to do with me being on a stage and in front of people and getting their approval and their praise and, oh, wow, you did so good, like that type of thing. I think that's not what it was about for me. It was about what the story did to the audience member and the healing that occurred in that time. I mean, that's the way my brain started thinking because of what happened when I was 9 years old. So I was always thinking in a very deep way. And that was always my goal, was to transport the audience member to another planet, to give them a break from their reality, for a minute. So watching them laugh and cry and just be on the edge of their seat for whatever's happening, like that was everything to me.
That was everything to you.
And it was healing. When I did West Side Story, I actually got I got thank you letters from audience members saying, like, thank you for playing Maria XYZ. Like, and I've never gotten thank you letters for playing a character before. And like that's why I do what I do. That's why I did it. So after the lockdown, and I really had no idea what I was going to do with my life. I was thinking, what did I want? I wanted to have that same outcome regardless of what the medium was. So regardless of whether it was theater or something else, I wanted that healing aspect to be the drive in my life.
Right.
And that is when I was like, you know what? I got to open up a business. I'm going to start a healing practice. I'm going to start an inspirational practice and help share everything I've learned along the way in my short 25 years of life. But I'm also act as the telephone cord between the spirit world and the human world. So I'm literally just a telephone cord between who's ever sitting with me, the client, and their spirit team up there. So channeling all of that and being the connection between there, that has been so gratifying for me, and I can see this going in so many different directions, this business. I
do like that. I love the fact too that a calling, you know what I mean, like that awakening kind of allows you to build, especially like that type of like spiritual business, you know what I mean, and it shows too that inner feeling too. And I know, like, I had that inner feeling also with my own calling as well. I know the fact that when you have like that type of calling, it's like a different vibe. It's like a different aspect of, like, it's not like you're just like, I don't feel, I guess I'll do it. No, it's like that feeling of, why is this telling me to do it? And you end up just doing it.
There's
it's like
a leap of faith involved too sometimes.
It's like that, right? Yeah. And then I guess for you, it's like kind of realizing that you found like a purpose in life. You know what I mean? And that's actually a really cool like way of how it panned out for you, because it really did start out actually when you were 9 or 10, because of all, again, like I said, we all go through like negative aspects in life, especially like what happened to you, you know what I mean? I know I've been through it, everybody has been through it. So things like that, especially like a catalyst of some sort, creates that foundation of where you end up. You know what I mean? And that's awesome though. So I that's another thing too. So we go into the origin already. So tell me more, like, I guess, because I'm trying to understand like the spirituality, also like the medium too. So like describe like, you know, more details to me of what it is, you know.
What I do?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so aside from just being, you know, the telephone cord between the spirit world and the human world, let's take each. We'll do each certification. We'll break each one down really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So psychic is basically guidance on your life path. And I'm in communication with my guides and the sitter's guides, which is the client's guides. Right. And everybody on Earth has a guidance team that has been following them since before they were born. Some people call them guardian angels. It's pretty much the same concept, just different wording.
Gotcha.
And so I'm in communication with them and my guides to answer these questions. I also use cards if they would like for me to use cards. That it's a tool. At the end of the day, it's only a tool.
Gotcha.
And then mediumship is when I'm actually communicating with loved ones that have actually passed on. What they do is they... I know people get like weirded out by it, and I so get that. That is kind of weird. Like,
no, but it's But here's the thing: it's understandable. I get it. Like I said, we're all humans, so people like believe it or people like don't believe it. But it's like
some people also think it's disrespectful, and I just want to put on you can believe whatever the heck you want, but the last thing my intention is to be disrespectful. So even if, you don't believe in it, at least, give me the grace of knowing that I'm trying to be respectful with it.
Yeah.
That's all that I really need. You don't have to agree.
Yeah,
but that is that is one of my favorites, and that it's so healing for the client to be able to speak to and ask questions and actually communicate. They're so alive. Spirit is so alive. It's awesome. Absolutely magnificent. It's beautiful. So the way they show up is usually they present themselves to me in a way that the client will understand it. Right. All right. So they may not show up exactly how they were when they passed away. They may show up how they looked when they were, I don't know, 70 or 30, or how whatever would highlight their personality the most. If they really liked the way they looked and wanted to keep themselves, prim and proper, they probably would have shown up like they were 25, 30 years old. Gotcha. And they'll show up with their anniversary, with their personalities. So they'll say things, and sometimes it's exactly the type of thing that they would say to the client. And I would have no idea, because I wasn't in the house with them when they were going through this.
Right.
And I would say just what I'm getting, and like Sitter's looking at me with these tears, and like, no, you did not just say that. You didn't just say, oh my God, she's here, or he's here. Oh my God, that's grandma. Like, whatever it is. And then they give you guidance on your life, because they are watching you. They're watching out for you. And it's beautiful. It's very, very healing.
That is great. That's awesome.
So then I'm also an ordained minister, where I could practice any of the sacraments. I'm a Reiki master teacher and healer. So I'm also an energy healer as well. I've always been a healer. I just didn't realize that there was a name for it.
You're probably like looking at it like, what is this called?
Yeah, again? I had no idea. I also used to talk to spirit, and I had no idea. So
seriously?
When I was like 6 years old, I would be in the bathroom at school talking to myself. It was not an imaginary friend. I would be talking to. I knew that I was talking to spirit.
Like, do you like visually see it or like hear it, or
yes, both.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that's with the clair senses. So our 5 senses. There's also an etheric 5 senses. So 5 senses for the more metaphysical world, and those are the clair senses. So clairaudience is when you hear. Clairsentience is when you have the ability to see. Claircognizance is when you just know. It's almost like a download. It's like, I don't have no idea how I know that, but I just know that. Yeah. And clairsentient is. That's the one I'm biggest in. I am a natural empath. Like, I can feel everything, and that's not always a good thing. Like, I could be in the grocery store, for instance, and if someone's having a really, really bad day, all of a sudden I'll feel like depressed, and I'm like, why am I feeling depressed?
So you get affected by like...
I can be, yeah. It's tough. Damn. So,
So it's like...
Yeah, so like... when the country's going to shit, right? And all of a sudden everyone's like doing whatever the hell they want, I can feel all that shit.
That's
like a couple of years ago when everyone was just going mad, that was a really hard time for me empathically. It was really tough.
Yeah. I guess like the next question too, because I'm curious, do you think it was like from what you're telling me, was it like you got these senses like just from like genetics or like birth or anything like that, or just kind of like
So actually we are all psychic. Every single one of us are psychic.
Like the whole family, or like
the whole world?
The whole world we are?
Yeah. Just like I am.
Tell me more. I want to know how I'm psychic, but explain.
So you are. Okay, and everyone's on a different level of it, but it is our birthright to be able to communicate from where we came. God is not going to just shove you onto planet Earth, crazy planet, with absolutely no means of communication with the other world where you came from. That is your home. The spirit world is our home.
Gotcha.
Where we are right now is like a dream. So if you think about it, it's just this tiny moment in time in comparison to the millions and millions of years before and the millions of years after. And years, I can't even use that term because time is man-made. So we were always, we just are. We are. There is no...
Is it like a...
It's like cannot be created nor destroyed. You just have been. You're eternal. Your soul is eternal. So
I see. Okay.
Our time here on Earth is very short. So of course you're able to communicate, but we don't know that because by the time we get to around 9, we start to be conditioned. 8, 9, conditioned by the outside world. Prepared for society. The whole. I call it the 3D thinking, which is very material world thinking. It's that's not necessarily wrong. It's just not it's not an ascended level of consciousness thinking. It's very just 3-dimensional, and it's fine. Come home, go to work, go do it again. Like it's just very 3-dimensional. Yeah, and that's where the majority of people are living in that level of consciousness.
Called the reality in translation, right?
Yes, our reality.
I got you.
Yeah, and then there's a 4D reality, which is in between, and then 5D is that dimension of like heaven, the 5th dimension, and that's just pure energy, pure love.
Okay.
So our job as humans, as beings of light, as souls, is to raise our consciousness until we can become one with love, or as close to that as we possibly can.
Oh, I get you. So I know what you mean. It's kind of like, so obviously the 3D is like the reality. I feel like the 5D is, I'm going to say it just in my version, it's kind of like your inner soul. Like it's something that connects with you, like your mind and your soul, to become like one. But it's just kind of like one of those things. Again, it's something very deep. It's very internal. It's something that it just kind of happens.
Yes,
you know what I mean. It's like, it can't be like just forced or anything, but it just kind of just that the whole appear. It'll just be there.
Yes, exactly.
You know
because we're all souls living a human experience.
I get you.
If you think about it that way, it just makes sense. We are every single one of us. If we just remember who we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who are you? I'm an eternal soul. I'm an eternal being. I am meant to thrive. So everything else, all the other bullshit that life throws on us in between. Is meant to be overcome. It's meant to be. So if you think about it from that perspective, that's where my spiritual advising and counseling comes in. That's working through inner shadows and working through yourself to basically come home to yourself again, to blossom into the most beautiful version of yourself, where you're actually able to manifest what you want to be, a co-creator with the divine, because that's what you're meant to do anyway. You're meant to have stepped into your power completely.
That makes sense. I see why, like, the concept of that. It makes sense because it's I had like a previous podcast. We talked about again mental illness. Obviously, I think that's part of the 3D world because everything, as emotions kind of come in, it depends on like the day or what you go through in life. There's going to be times where you feel stressed out, you feel depressed, you feel sad. So I think from your perspective, I see what you're talking about. It's one of those things too, especially like whoever clients, again, it's confidential, so I know I'm not going to bring that like specifically on clients, but the clients in general probably like go to you because you bring out like, you try to make them feel at home, make them feel positive energy that you can get through this, you can overcome this. You just have to find, so you really are a healer. You really are a healer. Yeah, you really like try to make sure like, hey, like you're going through all this, but if you think about it internally and emotionally, you have to find your way, you know what I mean? And you're there for them to help you, especially with like, calling me, I guess, connecting with the spiritual world and stuff like that. So that's actually pretty cool. I also wanted to divulge into it more. So when we talk about, like, how you were saying like, oh man, like people will probably like judge me or whatever for what you do. And I was also thinking about it too when it connects with like relationships with people. So again, I don't know if like you're single or whatever, like we'll not get into that. But I wanted to ask too, like, say for example, you meet like a guy, right? And mind you, like, hey, like, they're great, like they're great, a great guy, literally, has a great work ethic. You have a great work ethic too. You both have a great like type of bonding and communication, right? But then what if he just all of a sudden was like, and then you tell him about like the spiritual stuff and the spiritual healing, and then he was just like, hey, listen, like you're a great person, but I'm not about that. Because he thinks that, maybe because later down the road, and if you go deeper into a relationship or marriage or whatever, they might think, like are you going to trust your spiritual more, or are you going to trust me more? So think of like that scenario. Like what would... Oh, yeah. Yeah, think about that. Like what...
Honestly?
Yeah.
It's
a tough question. I'm not gonna lie.
I'd say bye.
Bye?
Bye. I mean, thank you. Thank you, but bye. Because I believe that everyone we meet is either a lesson or progressing you forward. Okay? So if in this particular instance, this person and I, let's call him Jim. Let's just say Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Good old Jim.
Freaking Jim. But continue.
Let's just say Jim is, he's a great guy. That's great. Right. That's awesome.
Has everything.
Has it all.
Overall.
He's got it all. For me, that's not at all. And let me tell you why. Because for me, the most important aspect of a relationship is the connection that the two of you have. And that connection includes respect for each other, what they're into, and trying to understand them before judgment. So let's say Jim was into this and I really wasn't about it, but I genuinely felt a connection with him. I would genuinely try and meet him where he's at. Try and meet him and understand where he's coming from. See if I can hop on board with it. You know what I mean? I'm not just going to shut it down. That's the difference between someone who is open-minded and most likely more of a lesson. Yeah. Because what happens is you reach a stop sign. With that was a stop sign, right? He basically said, I don't think this is going to work. You're a great person, whatever. I wouldn't in any way, shape, or form pick someone who does not accept me for all of me and leave spirituality aside. At that point, you are going against everything that you've learned in order to get here, in order to become a solidary member, in sovereignty with yourself. Right? Just be so one and whole within that people can come into your life and leave your life, and you are so stable in who you are that you're like, I see you, Lord. I see you. All right. I know that this has a purpose in some way. So bye. Yeah. See you later.
Bye, Jim.
Bye, Jim. It was nice knowing you.
That makes sense, though. And that's okay. So the reason why I asked that too, because I was noticing as well that you spirituality, like what you do, is part of your core values. It's something I think, because now it's going to that point, because like I said, if Jim is a great guy, you guys had a far deep into the relationship, let's say I don't know,
we can stay friends.
2 or 3 years, and then all of a sudden it's one of those things, it just intertwines, you know what I mean? It's maybe I was on board with its, with the spirituality stuff, but then what if you know what I mean,
he changes his mind
maybe because of his other reasons, but it's also maybe for a core value of his. So it's one of those things.
Do you mean if Jim and I did have a really deep connection in some way?
Deep connection, but then something fell off, but it's something you would not expect. You know what I mean?
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So that would be a tougher situation.
Right, yeah.
If there was a genuine connection there, and then they kind of just, did an MIA type thing, I don't know, I kind of have to step back. I have no idea after that long.
Yeah.
But that's actually part of what I go over with my clients. We do a lot of work on soul connections in general, all different types of soul connections, and the way soul connections can come into your life and out of your life, change your life, and then leave again. But you still have to be so firm in who you are that your priorities are God and you, and then everything else.
Oh wow! So I have that same ideal way too, because for me, I always tell people, love yourself. Make sure that you're okay. Unconditionally, yeah, because you are you.
Yeah. And
soulfully, you know who you are. Family will always going to be there. Friends will come and go, but you know who your real friends are. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's God and making sure you love yourself. It's always the thing that sticks with me.
Exactly.
I can go through hell for 7 months or something, but I always think back to, and yeah, it sucks because sometimes like if it's something like pretty bad and it gets me thinking for quite some time internally, like I'll be okay. I'll be okay. I just have to, for me, it's like finding who are the right people to be with. I know my family's going to be there. It's like also like you have to have a strong foundation too.
For sure.
Yeah. So like for you, obviously, like, you know, I think I met your family like a few times already. I can already tell right off the bat you guys have a strong bondage.
Yeah.
Like you guys really do. And at the same time too,
I'm very lucky.
Yeah. Hey, it's a blessing. And also like, you know, a blessing too that you guys like held together, especially with that whole situation we talked about like literally, I don't even know how long ago, but like 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
It shows a lot, and it shows like as you grow up you start to know the foundations of, you know, who you are and even who you want in a man, right? You know what I mean? So like for you, your foundation is, you know, your spirituality and your spiritual advising, your family, you know what I mean? That's another, again, it's one of those things too that as you grow up, and especially when we talked about when you were getting lost for a little bit because of the whole COVID thing, I think that also played a big part of, you know, kind of understanding to find yourself, like for sure, like like mentally, emotionally, and soulfully. So that's actually pretty cool how you kind of, you know, talked about, literally, I'm actually glad you actually tell me like how it started, really, because ours obviously, like I thought it was 2016, to be quite honest with you. I thought it was 26.
My whole life has been ingrained in this type of thing.
Yeah, but that's part of life, you know, like life is
one big journey. It's
always
not a
be
destination.
Oh, absolutely.
It's
absolutely.
a journey.
Yeah,
it really is.
It's one of those things. Have you ever because, you know, we talk about, you know, because you're always a positive person, you always bring that positive energy.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have you ever had like a scenario where you like lost it for a little bit, like a moment where like crap, like I had it and then all of a sudden like have you?
I've had a couple situations that have really tested my faith. One of them had to do with a relationship that I really thought, like it was like God was telling me one thing about it, but what I was seeing with my eyes was so different. So at that point I was like, wait a minute, is my intuition right or not? I can't tell. I don't understand. And that was so weird for me because I'm like trained in this. I basically use my intuition for a living, and it was very weird. This was probably 2016 through through 2020 probably.
Also, it's like been like a
it's
constant,
well, it's
right?
It's a whole long story.
You don't have to go through it. Talk about it
the gist of it is that my intuition was right the entire time, but that length of time with who this person is, and that there is an unconditional love there, that I don't need to, you know, morph it or force it into something, that it just is, and that this trust in the divine, that all of it has a purpose. So those things that I was seeing with my eyes, let's just say, that was going completely against my intuition, that made me think, am I going crazy? I actually thought I was going absolutely nuts. Like I really thought that I was going crazy. And it turns out that it was right, and that there is a very deep connection there. But it took a very long time for me to get to the point where I was just able to surrender it, choose myself without trying to like force anything or make anything happen, and then it all works out. It just all works out. Yeah,
it was like one of those things. I guess from that situation, I think too, and this is just from my perspective, I feel like there was like a battle like internally between like what you were seeing, because he probably, like whoever it was, he probably was like a great person. Like that's why
a great person.
Exactly.
He's
and that's why
person,
the strands last for like longer than
right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But then the thing is, it's like, again, it's something where I don't know, but I feel like maybe you saw something in him, like within him, but then it's just like this other part of you, like just deep down, like I feel like my intuition and my gut's telling me like he might not be like that guy. Like he might not be the one. It's the word "the one" is huge, because obviously once you know the one
right.
is forever.
The one is forever. The one is your
Like,
that's your life partner, that's your life buddy, that's your soul buddy. That's what I call it. It's like they're a soul buddy that have traveled with you soul wise even before you've met them. Like, you two have always been on track together to get to where you need to be.
Right.
And it was actually the opposite of what you said.
Was?
That God was telling me that it was the right person. But what I was seeing was like, it just wasn't lining up like that. And it was weird. It was so weird.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay,
so then, but now that brings in a whole nother level of a lesson, and that is to choose yourself no matter what, and then they'll meet you whenever they're ready. You know what I mean?
So it's one of those things. Like, okay, I see what you're talking about. You just got to
surrender. And that's the thing. That was the thing that really tested me. That answers your question. And that it was surrendering that. Letting it go. Giving it to God completely. Yeah. Going off and doing my own thing. Seeing other people. You know, getting into other relationships. But also so unconditionally loving him and cheering him on from the side to the point where if he were to get married, I would be at the wedding.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's like
there's just a genuine love and care there, regardless of how God ends up putting it together. That was just it's been a long ass journey with that though. Like this was not a 1 year thing. Like this has been since 2016.
I see. So he's like, okay, I see. So he's been always the one, right? Or
he's my soul buddy.
The soul buddy. I'm sorry. Yeah, he's like the soulmate.
Yeah.
So even after all that, like, you will still be there for him, like
for sure,
yeah, because that makes sense to me, because it's like
it doesn't have to be romantic.
It doesn't have to be, but it's like that.
It can be, but it doesn't have to be.
Right, but it's like a genuine feeling, like
it's so
down.
real,
like,
and it's real, unconditional.
Right? Okay,
there's no conditions, and that's really what humanity is here to learn, is love, and that was the biggest challenge and lesson in love for me. This is so interesting because I wasn't expecting us to go into this specific topic, but I'm so happy to talk about it. Like, that's totally fine.
Love
that
language.
It's this specific story I wasn't expecting to tell, but the most important lesson in love is to love unselfishly. So if you're able to love unselfishly without attachment, without attachment of any kind, without any type of codependency, where you can just sit back and watch them live their life and cheer them on and love them in any form, whether it's platonic or romantic, or it can even go back and forth. It doesn't matter. There's just a love there. And it is, to learn that at this age was also really weird, because everyone around you is focused on something totally different. Like
totally
different than
completely,
that.
like, just like, what?
Yeah, like, what the heck? Like, everyone's just trying to sleep with everybody. Let alone actually trying to find some sort of relationship. Let alone it being just completely unconditional love.
Yeah, it's a different vibe too, because like I had like a glimpse of that unconditional feeling before, like that, because it's like, to me, it also depends on like how you are. Like, again, I was gonna go into like the love language. You know what I mean? Because it's one of those things, like, when you start doing it, like, just your actions just start gravitating.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Like, I was just like, why am I doing this for this person? Well, it's obviously out of love.
Out of love.
Like, just like, not even thinking, just like instantly. Like, if they were stuck in the highway, like they're literally like, I don't know if they ran out of gas or something happened to like on the hood, like, well, like the engine's not working. And if like I love them unconditionally, I would go.
Of course.
I would go just out of like a heartbeat. I would go.
Of course.
And it's a very, very different feeling. You know what I mean? Because it's like, there's like hey, like, oh yeah, like, I love you, yeah. But then there's like a I love you, like, I'm running to get you.
Yes.
It's crazy though. It's because it's so unconditional, and this is also like an emotional thing too. That it gets to the point where it's just like, oh my god, like, I can't stop. You know what I mean? I had like a glimpse of that like years ago, and I was just like, why can't I stop? And it was so tough for me to get out of it, because obviously it wasn't the right person.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you
still had a glimpse of what that was.
What that was, yeah. Yes. So I always kept that reserved for like the right person. You
know what I mean?
But honestly, it's one of those things where I want it to be natural. Like, at some point, like, when I start to feel it, and I'm just like, okay, this is a very, very interesting, and I'm also aware of it. But it's so different because you're thinking, but your soul are like, you think it would be one, but you can feel like two different entities like happening.
That's a whole nother ball game. Oh my God, head versus heart is a whole nother thing. Like I could have a whole nother podcast just on that.
I know, we already had enough content. We had enough
just on that alone. Like that is a huge.
It's a huge difference. Like I noticed that feeling because even when I'm like, you know, I've learned from it through like that situation to, you know, focus on what you got going on, 3D world, the reality. But also I don't want to disregard my emotions. Like emotions plays a big factor in life, you know what I mean? It's always going to be there.
100%.
Always going to be there. It's just one of those things where when you're aware of it and you notice it, and that's when, you know, when you gain that growth and the wisdom of what you go through, you're aware of what you want. Like especially who you want specifically, like the core values, definitely a big part. Doesn't matter by looks, it matters about like who they are as a person, like how they do in their life, like what they're passionate about, and most important, like I said, the most important thing too is they accept you for who you are.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? And that to me was
exactly
that's like one of those things that I realized growing up, like, all right, I don't know who it's gonna be, but whoever it's gonna be, like they'll just hopefully, or we'll see, naturally come.
And that's how that's actually how you manifest your soulmate. Is you don't necessarily have to know exactly who it is, but if you just have the check boxes, you know, ticked off, and you could just feel that someone out there, you could feel that magnetism pull to something. Like you don't know who the heck it is or where they are, when you'll find it, but you just have the faith that it'll find you in the right timing when you're both ready. Exactly. And it's the same thing across the board with relationships.
Yes.
It's that way with pretty much anything, but especially with these really, really, really deep ones. It's, you just pull it in. You pull it in,
yeah. That's why nowadays, again, like we're going to finish up. Nowadays, like, it's so like the generation nowadays is just one of those things, like it's hard to find relationships because
it is.
Everyone's like focusing on like, obviously not a bad thing at all because, you know, success.
Yeah.
Like, there's more opportunities in this era. Back then it was more like an old school, like we get married at like a young age.
Right.
Totally fine. Fine. But then it's just like one of those things where like I think a lot of people are afraid to fall.
Oh, yes.
Because of that.
Yes, so then sometimes people don't even try.
They don't try, and that's where it gets all confusing because it's just like, how am I going to find that one person when everyone just kind of like whatever?
Right,
like,
exactly.
You know, I come in and I go, and it's just like.
But you already know the answers to that deep in your heart, and I don't think we are taught to listen to our intuition often enough.
Yeah.
And especially from a very young age, I would love to see children encouraged to listen to their intuition.
Yeah.
And that's just something that is not taught.
It's not taught.
in the Western world.
Yeah. You found out at 9, so I did. You know what I found out? I found out video games at like 9.
Hey, that's awesome.
Pokemon, Nintendo.
That's great. We love a good video game.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, though, we're all meant to thrive. All of us, we're all on this journey back to oneness, we're all one with each other. And to have hate and just division, it doesn't even make sense because it's not what we're here for.
No, we have a purpose here.
We do. Life. Every single one of us has a really deep purpose. It may sound cliche, but let me say it's not cliche at all.
It does sound like it does, but like realistically, it's not. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows it's a real deal.
It is.
Like you're here in this world for a reason.
Yeah, you're not here for shits and giggles. Let me tell you that.
We only live one life.
Exactly.
Literally, and that's why I'm actually like happy that you came onto the show because like, being able to express all this, especially for a person that really went through a lot, literally for like years, and then being able to utilize like how you are as a person growing up, and especially, you know, being able to find that awakening, you know, spiritually and all that stuff. So thank you for coming to the show.
Oh, thank you.
Of course. And thank you guys for watching Dark Rose Podcast. Stay tuned for episode 19, which is whenever, but we'll see each other soon. Thank you for coming, Alessandra.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.